Hello everyone, this is ponderonweather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a tropical update with the current named storms, as well as what may be coming in the tropics for October. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel, as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. This is your Sunday, September 19th update, and we're going to be talking about the tropics. Here's the overall big picture. There is actually the remnants of Nicholas that's still dumping some very heavy rain and flash flooding. That's not a tropical depression or anything like that any longer, but it is an upper level low pressure system that dumped some flooding rains into Tuscaloosa, Alabama yesterday. But still, they've got flash flood watches in northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, as well as portions of Georgia here, and even into Tennessee, that they've got more heavy rain from just the leftovers of Nicholas. We also have a newly developed tropical storm out here. Then we also have Odette that did in fact produce a tropical storm out here, but is now actually dissipated and safely well off to sea. We actually have a newly developed tropical depression that comes off the coast of Africa. So things are still pretty active in the tropics. So let's zoom in and take a look at Peter, and it got named a formidable storm yesterday. Then we also have tropical depression 17 that's coming off the coast of Africa. So you can definitely see it's very active. In fact, if 17 gets named today Rose, which I think it will, that would be only 2 times on record that we've had an R named storm on by September 19th. That was 2005 and 2020. So what happened those years? Man, it was very busy, guys. So yes, 2005 we had 28 named storms to finally end the season, and of course last year we had 30 named storms. So both of those years were very active. So we're definitely setting the pace bar high this year, and again looking at another very active season. And in fact, we still have got 47% of the season left. So we're not nearly done, and goes all the way through the end of November. And this is only September 19th. And October is ahead, which is typically a pretty active month. And I do feel just like last year, it's going to be a very busy month in October. So let's zoom into what's happening now. So here's the overall development over the United States. We've been talking about this cold front, which is now in the Pacific Northwest. It's going to be making a beeline across the U.S. all the way through the rest of the week. There's your setup for by Thursday. That continues pressing some very cooler air for much of the country. So that's going to be a welcome relief. But the good thing is, once this cold front meets up with Peter here, that's actually going to be keeping it safely offshore. So as you can definitely see, this actually takes a kind of a similar track that what Larry looks to take just a couple weeks ago. But you can definitely see the development from this system is not very bullish at all. It only keeps it as a minimal tropical storm as it continues lifting west-northwestward and eventually northwest. It may, in fact, if it still holds together, impact Bermuda sometime by next weekend. But overall, this seems like a pretty weak system, basically. So then as we continue through the rest of the week, yeah, that trough just continues pressing off the East Coast. By next weekend, we are still expecting below average temperatures for much of the southeast and the eastern portions of the United States. But look what happens here. We've got that ridge building back in from the west. And so once the ridge starts to build back in, we start to maybe look for tropical trouble. But in the meantime, with those successful cold fronts that are moving off the East Coast, that's going to keep Peter well offshore, and a lot of the ensemble members keep it on a track more or less what Larry did, and keep it basically east of Bermuda, and then safely out to sea. And then we actually have that tropical depression 17 that's going to be probably named Rose, that's also going to be able to swing up and move off to, offshore. But this is for the next 15 days. And what happens, check this out, on the ensemble member guidance, by the time we get into late September going towards that end of the month, that first couple of days of October timeframe, we start to see more ensemble members starting to pick up on some lowering of pressures underneath in the Caribbean again. And this has been a sweet spot for development this year. And yeah, we have to be on the lookout for more tropical trouble trying to enter the Gulf of Mexico as we get into that end of the month time frame. So why is that? Well, basically we've got those troughs moving across right now, but we got the ridge going to be building back in, and by the time we get into that September 30th time frame, when we got the ridge building back in, that's the ridge over troubled waters. You tend to lower the pressures underneath, and that's exactly what may happen as this ridge builds to the north. We've got lowering pressures underneath, and that's why the ensemble members are already trying to hint at possible tropical storm development as we get into that later end of the month time frame. And yeah, there's that blue kind of showing up as the weakness of the ridge kind of sneaks in underneath, and this may be highlighted again, more tropical trouble down the line. So let's take a look at of the overall tracks as we get deeper into this hurricane season. We're past peak season, which is technically September the 10th. So, and you can see normally September is a fairly active month, which it has been. But as we get into the October timeframe, here's your favorable tracks. The blue is your more kind of likely track. The green is your more likely, but the orange is your most likely tropical track. So as I mentioned, as these fronts keep moving across, it definitely puts less and less as we get into October, Texas out of the play. I mean, I got a saying because I live in Texas, the first fall front of the year puts Texas in the clear. So with that first fall front moving through Texas this week, I do feel that's going to be putting them safely away from tropical trouble for the rest of the season. But a lot of the guidance puts it further east. So we're going to have to look at the Caribbean was really active last year in October, as well as getting into portions of Florida. And you can see the favorable tracks. And with that ridge developing further off to the north, and like we did last year, we had a fairly warmer October, and that's why October was such an active month. And I do feel that's going to be the same as we go deeper into that October timeframe. So let's take a look at the vertical velocity index. I take a look at this a lot because right now we've got a lot of sinking air motion, and that's why these tropical storms are able to get named, but they're not able to do much of anything and be fairly weak. Odette formed, it wasn't a storm very long. Peter formed, it's a storm, but it's not going to be doing much of anything. Rose is probably going to be another storm as well. But as we get into that other time, at that end of the month time frame from that September 30th through October 4th, we definitely start to see some weakening in that sinking air. So you start to look for weak spots, and we are seeing a weak spot showing up into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's why the ensemble members are already trying to hint at possible tropical trouble development down the line. And another factor we look at is the Indian Ocean. So we have a lot of upward rising motion air as we get deeper towards the end of the month in that first week of October into the Indian Ocean. That tells me we're going to have tropical trouble over into the Atlantic side as we get deeper into October, and especially that first week of October through the third week of October, like we'll go over. So let's take a look at some of the ensemble members from the latest GFS ensembles. Of course, this is a long ways out, but yes, it's already hinting. This is through October 4th. As we get towards that September 29th, 30th, October 1st, 2nd, 3rd time frame, we could be looking at possible tropical storm development, some sort of tropical entity trying to come out of the Caribbean and lift northward into the Gulf of Mexico. So there's definitely some hints of something to be on the lookout for as we get into that end of the month, that first couple of days of October timeframe into the Gulf of Mexico, as we extend the view and look at the latest Japanese model of that upward rising motion air from the September the 15th. We go look at the week 3 to week 4 time frame, which would essentially put it around that first week of October through the third week of October, right? We've got a lot of upward rising motion air hinting coming back into play into the Caribbean as well as the Gulf of Mexico. So there's two sweet spots. The longer term guidance is already kind of hinting at possible more tropical trouble ahead in the Caribbean going into the Gulf of Mexico for that first week of October through that third week of October time frame. Now let's take a look at some of the longer term GFS anomalies as far as precipitation. We definitely see it's still hinting at above average precipitation anomalies still for the southeast and much of the east. So that's as these cold fronts push in, I think Texas is going to be drying out with the La Nina coming back into play. And that just pushes as an active time and less shear over the Atlantic as we get into October. That puts the southeast coast and more into the east coast more into play, and definitely the Caribbean, like we saw last year. The European models kind of hinting at the same thing. More, above average precipitation anomalies hinting at into as we get towards the southeast into Florida off the east coast. So these are some of the areas that we're going to have to be watching as we get going to that October time frame. But this is probably the most telling what we may have to come on the vertical velocity index. Here is where we live down here. There is Africa. There is your Caribbean. There's the United States right here. There's the sinking air. The red is depicting of the sinking air that what we have currently right now. We have those storms, but they're well out to sea. And as it gets closer, it hits that sinking air and it squashes them. They're not able to do much of anything. That's what we're currently in right now. But yes, there's definitely hints as we get towards that end of the month. There's subtle hints of green starting to pop up. We got a little bit more upward rising motion there, some weakness into the Gulf of Mexico here. But definitely as we get into that October 6th time frame, we see a lot of upward rising motion air. And we've seen this come into play. Tropical, they come in chunks. And I think the next chunk of really highly activity is going to be in between that October 6th, maybe that October 20th, October 26th time frame. For those 3 weeks right there from October 6th to the October 26th time frame, I do feel it's going to be a pretty active time on the Atlantic side for more tropical trouble that we're going to have to be dealing with, possibly in the Caribbean, getting into the Western Gulf and up the East Coast. So definitely that's something I'm going to be looking out for and keep you well ahead of the storm as we get into that October time frame. I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.